Okay, good evening, everybody. Today we are going to be looking at safety in the workplace. The last in the 6-class series of the Giving Back Series 2021 Free Facility Management Workplace Productivity Training. Facility managers are responsible for protecting the safety of people who work in the buildings that they manage. Every other responsible employee at management level are automatically accountable for everyone's safety. Workplace safety is the responsibility of everyone in the organization. So basically, while the FM and management are responsible and accountable, each person will be responsible for his own and others around him. There are legal obligations to meet certain safety requirements in every organization. But we are going to talk in this lesson how to go beyond those legal obligations, because there are legal implications for being safety conscious, for providing safety as a service to the people that occupy the spaces that we manage. People occupying spaces want to work and return home safely. While they are at work, they want to be given a functional and comfortable environment within which they can execute their jobs, and environment that will not give them long-term health implications beyond their working time in the organization. Organizations can actually be prosecuted by the laws of Nigeria for exposing workers to risk and unsafe conditions. And if that happens, the facility managers are often the ones at the receiving end. They're the front lines. They're the ones who implement the organizational policies and procedures with regards to safety in the workplace. But ultimately, senior management, the heads of the organizations and the departments in which we work, are the accountable parties. The buck stops on their desk. So in this training today, we're going to look at what workplace safety is. We will discuss how to create a safety plan. We'll develop, how to develop training procedures, the legal responsibilities associated with a safe work environment, the role of management, how to train people who work in the spaces that we manage so that they too can mind their own health and their own safety, and how to implement such plans. There are legal obligations, like I said. I think, in fact, that is the number one expectations for every organization, that we understand what is required by law. And they're very simple. People who come to work should have a place where there is security, there is safety, they work with sufficient space around them, they are able to feel not threatened in the spaces where they work, they are able to have the right tools to work in that environment, and they're able to deliver the results they've been appointed to deliver in that organization. Any form of threat, any risk factor to personal health and safety becomes a direct threat from the organization that you are working for. Unless that organization has done its bit to ensure that resources are provided, training is provided so that everybody understands their roles with regards to each other's safety, and that everyone shows commitment to personal and community or group or team's safety. So there is a legal aspect, and that is very strong. Even though that's not the most significant reasons why we try to teach safety at the workplace, we want that legal liability, that statutory requirement, minimum requirement, to be taken care of first. Then there is the ethical obligation. The organization has a responsibility what we call a duty of care, not only to its employees, but also to the publics who interact with the organization through its products and services and its buildings and premises. That organization, when the organization operates ethically, they get to communicate to the public that they are a responsible citizen, that they are a stakeholder in the community where they find themselves, and that they are committed to the well-being of everybody around where the organization operates. So that's the ethical obligation. That alone can produce a perception that the organization is a place to be, a place to work, a place to live, a place to affiliate with. That on its own drives to the third reason why health and safety in the workplace is very significant and a good investment for the organization. There are economic results, there are economic rewards for implementing health and safety. For starters, employees are healthier, and healthier employees are productive employees. At least that's the baseline for workplace productivity. There's no how much we teach workplace productivity and personal productivity. We've done all week, for example, when people are ill, when people are injured. So injuries and illness, as well as all kinds of infections, are things that threaten people's health. Those must be taken care of first so that productivity can now step on that. The organization will produce better, more results, economic gains, because it has focused on health and safety. So the first reason is illegal. There are laws. In Nigeria, we have the ISPON law, the Institute of Safety Professionals of Nigeria. And then we have other acts for protecting workers, like the Factories Act that has been replaced by a recent law now. And there are a few more. Lagos State has the Lagos Safety Commission, for example. These are all laws that have been put in place to protect workers from harm in any work environment they find themselves. So the legal is number one. And the second is the duty of care, the ethical reasons to promote health and safety. I want to be perceived as a considerate organization that feels and cares for the individuals and the community. And then there's the economic consideration. A healthy workforce is a productive workforce. A healthy customer base, a healthy community will not give too much trouble to the organization. They can operate seamlessly and they can get the right kind of workers to employ for their work. Okay? So employees are legally guaranteed a safe working environment. The law guarantees that. In Nigeria, we have ISPON. In the US, they have OSHA, and they have all types of organizations across the world that provide regulations, that provide policies that are put in place to ensure that workers are protected. And as Nigeria is a developing country, we tend to subscribe to all kinds of legislations from other countries, all kinds of what we call best practices, global best practices. So we adopt OSHA, and we also adopt NIBOSH, the British Health and Safety Regulatory Authority as well. They have a lot of information that helps employers know what to do. So today we are going to look at the roles of the management, owners of the business, represented by the facility manager, who is the one who is the custodian of the environment, the buildings and facilities, and as well the custodian of the assets and people that exist in the organization. So every employer has specific roles and duties to keep their employees safe. Employers are required to discover and change hazardous working conditions Don't wait for people to respond by complaining before you know something is going wrong. Inspections and audits are statutorily required. And this is what the FM needs to arm himself with to be able to represent the employers properly. And then when there are hazards, warn employees about the hazards. So we talk about all kinds of work safety procedures, the safety data sheets for documenting hazards from chemicals and other materials. You talk about fire codes. You talk about so many things. There are so many opportunities we have as employers, represented by FM, representing the employers, to ensure that people know what they should know and they get the right information so that no mistakes are made. And then we carry out regular inspections and testing just to be sure that everything is in order. And then we take care of that aspect of fitness of the workforce. Okay, if people are ill or injured, they cannot deliver on their jobs. So every time there is any information regarding illness or injury of any occupant, I'm not talking of just your facility management team now, any occupant in your building, the FM should automatically be involved. And then your job is to ensure that you also protect employees from each other, because sometimes we talk about injuries and illness, and we always think about the environmental factors, things that are built into our buildings and our environment. Sometimes human beings bring hazards to our environment. They threaten each other. They cause harm to each other by omission or commission. It is the job of the facility manager and the leaders in the organization to ensure that we do not have any such violent situations in our workplaces. For you to have a safe workplace, it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of organization, involvement of everybody in the organization. You cannot sit down on your own, take your pen and paper and write out all potential hazards. It is not possible. You need people who are on a day-to-day basis exposed to these various hazards to be able to identify all the hazards you will not be able to pick up. So we talk about hazard analysis, where you identify and get rid of any hazards and reassess regularly. So on a regular basis, you pick up hazards, you treat, deal with them, make sure they are no longer risk factors to the environment or individuals around there. And then you reassess again to see that that problem has actually been solved and is not rearing its head again. Employees need to be involved in putting together a safety plan. It's something that has to involve the hearts and minds of everybody. If you take health and safety as a legislative function where you go and create the laws and come and impose it on people, people will still find ways to sabotage that implementation. They will still find ways to either ignore it or just make it not work at all. And then ensure that the facility is maintained. The equipment that we work with as our tools, the equipment and furnishings and fittings and machines that are around us in the organization, they need to function well, because if they're not functioning well, there's a risk that it can go, they can become more injurious to people who work with them. And then all employees need to be trained. Many organizations are good at training their operation staff, their FM staffs, their maintenance crews on safety procedures, on how to handle those machines, and how to take care of themselves, how to keep up with their PPEs, how to handle the chemicals that they work with, and so on and so forth. Let's not forget that this work often takes place in the presence of other people. Take cleaning, for example. You're going to clean offices when other people are there. So instead of training just the cleaners about cleaning, safety, you need to train everybody in the organization about cleaning, safety. So they get exposed to what happens during cleaning. They are now able to identify, become aware of the various hazards that they can be exposed to around the machines. are the tools and equipment that the cleaners are using around them. Managers have an important role in workplace safety. They have the responsibility to promote safety by dialoguing with employees. We must lead by example. If you ignore safety, you cannot expect the employees themselves to follow the rules and guidelines. If you put out rules and guidelines, you must keep to those rules. Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. It's not enough to be the one proposing the change. If you don't live the change, if you don't act the change, if you don't act that model of the model staff that you want the other employees to follow, you may be sabotaging your own operations as well. Promoting and enforcing safety standards, let people contribute to what you establish as your own organizational safety standard. That's the baseline. Ask employees for their ideas on improving safety. Hold contests where winners have strong safety records. You gamify the process, where you provide incentives for people who are complying and are preventing accidents. Train, train, train. If your entire organization does not get any safety training in a whole year, that organization has failed in its responsibility to keep people aware of what hazards are around them, how things are changing in the work that they do and the works that are being done around them, and how they can protect themselves and those around them. And then improve morale. If people are unhappy, disgruntled, unmotivated, or any of those negative morale situations you find in some organizations, there is no way they will take safety seriously. They are more likely to ignore safety and do things with more recklessness. If there are safety policies and procedures where penalties are prescribed, incentives are prescribed, do not allow your organization to be the barking dog that does not bite. If people comply, ensure that they get the reward or incentive. If they infringe on safety policies, whatever the consequence that has been written into that policy or procedure document must be implemented. That is the one sure way people will feel a strong sense of obligation, that they cannot toy with this. But remember that those consequences or penalties were not created exclusively by you, the manager. They were created collectively by everyone in the team, debated, agreed upon. So the enforcement should be total, 100%. No slacking when it comes to enforcement of health and safety policy violations. So what goes into a health and safety program? The first and most important component is commitment from the top management, usually written in the form of a policy document, one page, 1 or 2 paragraphs, a simple document that says, we will do ABC to show our commitment to health and safety. I will measure our effort doing ABC. That's basically what that document says. It is usually signed by the most senior or the most accountable person in that organization, the CEO, the MD. That policy document is what confirms that the organization at the highest level is committed to health and safety and the program. And then you have the management and the staff showing that they are committed to it. One sure way to ensure that everyone is committed to it is to tap into their input. Get them involved in the process of generating that policy procedure document in the first place. Do not make it a case of I've thrown it out there, you have to comply. The process is more important than the final output. If people feel committed, it is because they feel they are owners of that process. And then there must be a careful documentation of the circumstances the safety environments that you find yourself in the workplace. You think working in an office that is brand new, posh, very well furnished, everything looks fine and working, does not come with its own risk. There are hazards everywhere. But don't forget, hazards are not risk. Hazards are the presence of things, circumstances around us that can quickly turn into risk through exposure. If there's water on the floor, for example, and that room is locked, nobody can go in there. We agree that there's still hazard in the room because there's water on the floor. But if somebody walks into that room or the room is open and made able to be accessed by anybody, that water on the floor or wet floor automatically has become a risk, because what happens is that anybody can go in there and then you can have a slip and fall accident. So we look at the entire site, identify all the potential hazards, do an analysis of what kind of risk can emanate from each hazard, and then put mitigation in place. We now train people to understand all of the hazards and all of those precautions and mitigation efforts that we have put in place to ensure that they don't fall victim to the potential risk. So at the top, you communicate expectations and oversee safety of everyone. Managers, supervisors, employees are all responsible for workplace safety. It's a shared duty. When this plan is created, one key aspect of the safety plan for every organization is the roles and responsibilities section, where everyone in the organization, all stakeholders, when you put together a safety program, you must consider the fact that it's a plan written down that answers questions. At the simplest form of planning for safety, you start with what you do as an organization. That's after you put your commitment to safety. That's the first thing I identified, the policy statement for management. Identify the activities that take place in this organization and say, what are the hazards that are common to us? What are the risk levels to this? What can we do, or what do we have in place to prevent, avoid, prevent, mitigate, transfer, whatever these risks are? That's basically what we are trying to do. And ensuring that everyone in the organization become fully aware of those risks and the plans that have been put in place to mitigate them. Corporate culture plays a large role in the health and safety of employees. Employers need to align health and safety goals with business strategies. Ensure that you're not only providing guidelines, rules, regulations, the environment that you create, your work environment must support health and safety, must support improved quality of life for employees, and prevent injuries that causes a lot of loss to both the individual and the organization. So it's important that we build a culture where people on their own feel a need to protect themselves from harm and from illness, as well as protect others in the team. When you have a plan, that plan cannot be created and filed off. Many organizations have HSE plans that have been used as part of quality management systems, submitted for bidding purposes to win contracts, to show our clients that we are very good at maintaining health and safety. But don't forget, the reason you have that document is to actually live it. According to the words of Goethe, knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. Training does not mean expensive investments. Training can be very simple. Getting people together to have discussions around a particular item and suggesting ways to get out or prevent that from becoming a big problem to the organization. If you implement your toolbox talks meetings, your daily operations meeting that should take about 15 to 20 minutes every day. Sometimes it takes up to 30 minutes because you have work planning, you have health and safety, and then you have other resource discussions as part of that daily reset of the day's activities. You could also get a lot of videos and incidents reports that have been shared, online, and other resources for teaching people on how to be safe with the work that they do. The important thing is safety must be built into our day-to-day activities as facility managers and as managers in our organizations. If you train people well, they will be more productive, they will be more present. Absenteeism will reduce because, of course, there will be less injuries and less illnesses. The morale of the individual will be boosted because they now feel a sense of confidence that they can take care of themselves. The risk of breaking the regulations will be reduced, and turnover, employee leaving the organization due to one reason or the other, especially when they don't feel safe in the work environment, will also be reduced. So you train people on the job. It helps people to feel a direct connection between what they are being taught and what they are doing. So this is the kind of job that you, as a manager, as a foreman, as a supervisor, as whatever coordinator, whatever role you hold, you bring in safety discussions into the actual performance of the job, either in early morning meetings or in actual activity. You point out safety and you have quick, short discussion. And then you also need to organize at least one full day of training per employee. I'm not talking of facility management staff. Every member of staff of that organization need to go through a minimum 1 day safety training in every year. Organizations that are applying these best practices will conduct a drill, will do some briefing, will hold the safety training as part of a town hall meeting of all employees. So if employees are called into town hall meetings on a monthly basis, and there is a 20 minutes or 30 minutes session devoted to health and safety, awareness, discussion of possible recent changes in operations and in assets and equipment in the organization and new risks that have been found, you can accumulate that into a whole year of health and safety training for every employee. So this is not just about operations teams and facility management team. No, this is about everybody in the organization receiving training about health and safety. What about when people come in to join the organization? Are they supposed to just observe the health and safety practices that others are implementing? Because at some point, if you are even not doing refresher health and safety courses for the team, people will be performing so badly with regards to health and safety that new employees will pick up bad habits very quickly, even habits that they didn't think was possible in any workplace. They will see it in the hands of those they've come to meet. So when planning your orientation program for new employees, ensure that health and safety policies and procedures also form a critical part, not just HRO rules and operational matters. They must become familiar with the organization and how the organization works, what the organization is committed to with regards to health and safety, just like every other area. And then the ones that we do on the job are often show and tell type of training, where a supervisor, a foreman, a coordinator, takes a moment in the midst of a job or a task that has been done by the employees and teaches the employee what to do and gives the employee an opportunity to rehearse, practice, and tell him that he is now fully conversant or fully aware of what has been taught. There should be health and safety meetings. If you cannot create a health and safety meeting of everybody in the organization for some other constraints or other reasons, then you can impute it into regular operations meetings, put it into building user group meetings where you hold in small groups maybe in departmental meetings. You take some moments as a facility manager or health and safety officer to do a little briefing and have a little discussion. You can do it as part of a drill. Usually when you have a drill and people come down and you've done all the head counts and all the processes, you can use that opportunity to do a health and safety briefing and have some two-way communication with the people that you have assembled at that point. Every opportunity you get is to help you share what safety problems exist, what goals have been set, how each person can contribute to achieving those goals. It's important that our training sessions are carefully prepared. The material is put together with content that is relevant to the team that is going to be trained, and that you ensure that staff who participate in safety training are engaged. They are not just there because they must be there. Of course, it's mandatory. You have to make it mandatory. It cannot be optional that you should attend a safety briefing or a safety session, but ensure that people feel like they are part of it. You must come there not as someone who has figured everything out, but as one who has a listening ear, willing to hear what the participants in the meeting are going to say. We're going to look at one very key factor to health and safety. Your stress, the stress of the individual, the stress on people in the organization. Stress is uncomfortable, can also be dangerous. Stress and depression can cause serious health problems. The actions that people take to combat stress, such as smoking, drinking, overeating, and undereating, can make any stress-related health problems even worse. Richard Carlson said, stress is nothing more than a socially acceptable form of mental illness. We take stress as just stress. Oh, I'm stressed. This environment is stressful. This work is stressful. But we are dealing with both physical illness and mental illness every time stress sets in. Sometimes the things that causes stress are things you cannot avoid. For example, you have to go to work and be in traffic for hours. You're either going to go to work so that you can earn a living or not. You want to pay the bills. If you cannot avoid that stressful situation, you find a way to alter or adjust in your response to this stress. So, respectfully express your frustrations, because if you bottle up your frustrations, especially when you have man-made stressors like supervisors bumping you with stuff, not giving you time to deal with one before dropping another one on you, or you have situations where you're not given the right tools to deliver on your job, a lot of things can build up stress. Talk about it first. Don't always dig in a conflict. Compromise. Sometimes your own argument and positions that you have taken a hard position, issues that you have taken hard position on, can become stressful to you. Some people just have a heart attack after an argument. It's not the other person that killed him, it's him that killed himself. So it's important to compromise. It's also important not to allow other people to take over your life. If you are the weak type that cannot say no, you cannot assert yourself, you cannot express what you are feeling at a particular time, you're always nodding to what everybody tells you, you just die quickly. So be self-confident, be able to assert yourself and say, no, this I will not be able to do, this is what I can do. Talk about it. Instead of assuming everything, not be able to do it, still be stressed up and looking for a way to bury your head. Some of us habitually impose on ourselves our own stress by not planning how we're going to deliver our job. No schedule, no to-do list, no notepad to write things and remember, no calendar, nothing. As things are piling up, we just allow them pile up. That's how stress can build up heavily and destroy the individual. So how do you get out of this situation? Learn to say no when you can't. The world is not going to end. There are certain people that are natural stressors. They are born to stress you out. Anytime they see you, they have something you must do. They have an argument to pick with you. They have something they can throw on you that will put you on the edge. They always have something to disturb your life. What do you do with them? Avoid them. It's not all relationships that you must keep fresh in front of you every day. If you want to stay alive and reduce your stress, identify relationships that stress you and pull off. For some people, they just leave an environment, move out of a neighborhood, change jobs, do something. Of course, you plan it. You assess the stress level compared to. I know somebody that took up a lesser paying job outside Lagos because he didn't just feel he will survive in Lagos. He just didn't want to take the stress anymore. He moved. And don't pile too much on yourself. I've learned to have a list of things that need to be done, prioritize them, and take That thing. So limit your task. And then manage your communication. Talk with people so that you don't build things on yourself that causes stress to you. Focus on what you can control. Look for opportunities. Share your feelings. Forgive others to let go of negative emotions. The emotions you build within you can create a lot of negative, poisonous venom within the system that builds stress to a level of anxiety and even depression in some people. Somebody triggers an angry thought or an angry feeling in you, instead of taking it to heart, have consideration to forgive, even when you have not been asked to forgive. Learn to relax through meditation and exercise. I have been doing some exercise in this regard. Just try to physically exert yourself 3 times a week. Have time with pets if you're a pet lover, or with friends that give you a good time, that their conversation is uplifting. And have your me time, personal time every now and then. Spend time with nature. Breathe in fresh air once in a while. Use routines to reduce stress. Time with family. Time out with friends. Of course, friends that uplift you. That's stress. There is also the other problem of hazards or health challenges that come out of workplace violence. People think that, oh, it's when somebody kills somebody that is violence. No. Sometimes violence does not even require hand-to-hand or physical contact. Some violence are verbal, aggression of any type, whether it's physical or emotional. I know some people that will not allow anybody that is slightly shorter than them be for 1 minute in their organizations. They're always pounding on the person being shot, making every joke about it. It gets to a point where you can now define that continuous attack as violence. There are some behaviors that are threatening. When you invade people's personal space unnecessarily, you can be threatening. When you stand on doorways, for example, on corridors, and make people squeeze around you, you are threatening. So it's not all the time you wait until you say, who slapped somebody, who hit somebody, before you see violence. No, violence can be cold, soft, but forceful, without any impact, without any physical hit. But the impact can go deep. So the different behaviors that indicate a person may resort to workplace violence. It's important that we pick out some of the signs and symptoms that can lead to workplace violence. People who are expressing anger inappropriately, like banging of tables. Just know that this person is already being violent. You need to watch that person. When people do not take responsibility for their own mistakes, or even for things they should have done that they did not do, they find a way to justify, rationalize, and evade responsibility. Those who are always self-centered, they don't care how their actions affect other people around them. It's violence. So people say one thing and do another, all those deceptive behaviors in the organization. Identify them and say, this person might have an aggressive tendency. Some people will not take directions. They don't want to adapt to any kind of change, any kind of improvements, any kind of initiative or innovation coming around. Some lie, drink, or take drugs. All kinds of insidious behavior should be tracked and checked. Sometimes it's somebody who used to be vibrant, looking sullen and withdrawn, can be an indicator that is probably suffering from some kind of aggression or hostile behavior from someone else. And then some people are just antisocial. That's what we say. Oh, this person likes to keep to himself, or relates to people in a very inappropriate way that others cannot really understand. It's important that you don't wait until you see violence or aggression before you start saying, let's ask what happened though. Address issues before it escalates. Have a reporting mechanism where people can report anonymously their observations about things around them. And you or the HR manager, whoever is responsible for this documentation, you must use 100% discretion, extreme discretion in handling those information. Because if something happens tomorrow, you will need those information to support your work or your responses. How do you prevent harassment? Identify risks. Are there people that are prone to harassing others? Are there people that are susceptible to being harassed? And then policies that respond to this risk level, get it approved, and make sure the policy is implemented. We talked about identifying the organization's hazards. It's very important that you do inspections to pick up all the hazards. The team will go around to inspect for environmental factors like noise levels, temperature, electricity risk, and radiation. The one that is most common to us are electricity risk. Bare cables, burnt sockets, heating up plugs, and stuff like that. Chemical, gas, toxic liquids, dust in the environment. Some of us will keep fuel safe somewhere where it should not be. Biological, bacteria, virus, parasites in the environment. You probably didn't know until you were doing that inspection that cleaners were cleaning the toilets and using the same materials and tools to come and clean your desktop, where you drop your hands and probably put something in your mouth or touch your face from. And then inspections for safety, the equipment we use, work practices and work conditions, as well as ergonomics. People have posture issues, workstations that are not conducive, repetitive movements, and exposure to all kinds of ergonomic risk, which is harmful to the body over time. You pick all of these out through inspections, and then you categorize the various deficiencies and you take care of those that are more critical, and you go on and on until everything is resolved. And then ensure that there's a reporting mechanism for every incident or near miss. Don't wait for the incident or accident to have happened first before you now have a record. No. Then there is the issue of drug and alcohol abuse. Many people suffer from addictions to drugs and alcohol. If people in your organization have this problem, they will tend to make decisions that are not safe. Substance abuse increases sick time, decreased productivity, leads to accidents, and as such, employers need to address alcohol and drug abuse to protect the company and their employees. It's not just the individual. It's not just the individual. It is the individual and those around the individual that is at risk when drugs are concerned. People don't agree on what drugs are, but any substance that alters performance. Manual laborers will tell you that they must take certain agbo and then their energy will come back, or they have certain tablets they take and they will not get tired. Those are all drug abuse. So let people understand why you are putting these kind of policies in place. Performance enhancing drugs are also abusing of drugs. Alcohol are in such categories. and then ensure that people know that this is why you're putting those policies in place. These are the consequences for such contraventions, and ensure that you enforce those consequences all the time. But penalty is not the real reason why you are doing this. What you really want is for people to be comfortable in their work, be successful and productive in what they do, and to go home healthy every day. So you need their buy-in. You need to be able to identify situations that can lead to issues that can escalate over time. But of course, when it comes to substance abuse, people will hide it. They will keep it. They will not bring it out. And you may not have any evidence or anything you can use to say, I suspect, because that's where you need to be careful. You cannot just walk up to somebody because it's quiet and calm and say, I think you're taking some drugs. No. So many organizations will have a policy for testing. Some will do random testing when your behavior is too erratic or too unusual. And some will have a routine testing when on a certain day of the week or a certain day of the month, a certain resumption for activity, you take a test. It's important that you ensure that whenever the rules are set, people understand them and they can implement them. It can be enforced. Ensure it's always enforceable. Once you have identified the different hazards that your organization will face, and then of course you've looked at all the legal safety requirements for your business, draft a safety plan. And we have basically talked through what the safety plan is. Answer all those questions, ask all those questions about your activities and the hazards and risks, and then put together solutions. You can Google up and download some safety plans that have been used by other people and other organizations. Read through them, read through several, and create yours. Never use any template you find online to do your safety plan, because there are no two organizations, even if you're in the same industry, that should have the same type of safety plan, because the people that work in your organization will be different from each other. The activities you perform, the circumstances around which you perform those activities will also be different. As part of enforcement of safety, the plans that you have in place, ensure that you conduct proper maintenance for your properties and facilities. People sitting on broken chairs, for example, and tables that are leaning off because they are going bad, or doors that cannot secure properly, or tiles that are cracked and chipped from the floor. Your environment itself can become the first point of corporate liability for safety. And then, beyond the inspections that you carry on a regular basis, engage professionals to conduct surveys and give you a third-party view of how you are doing with regards to safety, and then get your employees to also give you their own contribution. As a minimum, we'll recommend electrical integrity audits as part of the surveys. Get experts to look at all of your electrical installations for regulatory violations, for risk that can lead to fire and unsafe conditions. Conduct ambience and environmental audits to pick up things that can result in health, unsafe and unhealthy environment, like mold in the air. Your air quality needs to be tested, for example. The level of dirt and smell and the environment people, what people inhale in the environment, and the cleanness of the space come under that on the audit. And then do an economic audit. Each of these can be done as a minimum once a year. Observe how people work, their workstations, the positions they are in, those who are doing repetitive movements, and just study how that affects them, their health, long term. Employees need to adhere to policies. They need to report on safe conditions. Don't say because he's my friend or we are all team members, we are cooperating, we are helping each other. Then you observe an unsafe condition or an unsafe act and you keep quiet about it. you don't know what that can lead to, because that is a major control point that you are allowing to slip through your fingers. If something happens, incident or accident, it must be investigated. Don't just say, oh, thank God, nobody was injured. That's what happens. We all say, thank God, nobody was injured. And then we forget about it. Investigate it and conduct a root cause analysis so that that near miss that happened today, that nobody was injured, if it happens again next time, someone might die. And train people, train employees, ensure that they understand everything about your safety plan. I often recommend that this training for the operations team will probably be quarterly, and for all staff in the organization should be annually, and ensure your safety plan is implemented. The implementation of your safety plan is a collaborative effort between management and staff. There's no way a senior management or an ND or GM or whoever the position is, or a facility manager, can enforce it on its own, because people have to comply for it to be implemented. So you create an implementation team that has people from management and people from the various user groups, employee groups. They should choose their own representatives, get them in the committee, and then they will be the ones that will be judging whether anybody is complying or not, and enforcing the compliance penalties or incentives. So the managers and the committee members are now to work together. We use committees because we cannot hold safety meetings weekly with the entire organization. You just ensure that a small group can meet regularly to review the plan, review recent incidents and reports that have been generated, and be able to recommend changes, recommend improvements, recommend rewards and incentives, as well as penalties for defaulters. Having a plan in place is not enough. You need to follow through with the plan. Review your health and safety plan regularly to make sure that the necessary changes are effective. The action plan will help you follow through with your commitments that have been written down in the safety plan. And the final note, safety is a cheap and effective insurance policy. Franklin said, he that's secure is not safe. Deterrence itself is not a preeminent value. The primary values are safety and morality. Hemakan. That's our lesson.